So, and we do know there are some studies that are small, but in other countries, Japan came up with a study on human gastric cancer. So this is a pretty decent study, but it was very detailed as far as the how part of how it works, and we're getting more information, but there's that. And I didn't want to get into details of how it worked, but you can look it up yourself as far as the mechanisms, and they actually measured it to the point of P21 being affected. You don't have to worry about that, but the goings on in this cell, this is my son's project, but this is a cell. That's the nucleus, your smooth endoplasmic reticulum, these guys are the mitochondria, that's rough endoplasmic reticulum, that's smooth endoplasmic reticulum, lysozymes and mitochondria. And that is a cool effect, is that I put it here. Sometimes what happens with the use of cannabis is that it just works to push the cancer cell into cell death. So the cancer cell is really fast and furious, like I mentioned. It's really trying to reproduce quickly. And sometimes if you choke off its blood supply or choke off its fuel source, it will actually die fast. That's how some of the keto guys, Dominic D'Agostino, I think it's Southern Florida, he came up with, he has information showing how a pure or a well-formulated ketogenic diet can actually push over glioblastoma multiforme. Just with keto, that's taking away carbohydrate and using fat, and the cells, these fast reproducing cells, they want carbohydrate, they don't want fat. So once you take that source away, they die because they're pussies. So if the cancer cell's a pussy and you introduce it to the right push, it will die. That's called apoptosis. There's other things, and there's other things in there that help, but one of the things that pushes them over is the switching over of fuel. So I might talk about that tomorrow. But the other thing that pushes them over is when the mitochondria starts to be affected. The mitochondria produce energy, but it also produces ROS, reactive oxygen species. That is like having an iPhone that's super hot in your pocket. The iPhone works well, and you can have phone calls, but if you put it in your pocket and it happens to be that Samsung one with the battery that exploded, it'll heat up your pocket to the point of burning you. Well, that's what these mitochondria do. If you stimulate the mitochondria the wrong way, they'll actually produce way too much ROS, and that'll start to melt the cell. Bingo, apoptosis. Ingenious, right? So this is where the beauty of nature is affecting nature versus chemotherapy affecting nature. Chemotherapy will work too, but in fact, there have been nice results with the use of chemotherapy in cancer. There have also been problems where the cancer is resistant. And in the case of breast cancer, sometimes you will not have the ability to fight. So specifically, let's look at this. I mentioned glioblastoma with Dom D'Agostino's work. So this is glioblastoma with TMZ. TMZ is a chemotherapy agent used for glio. And glioblastoma multiforme that's got to be worse than pancreatic cancer. And it's in the brain, so it goes fast. And it's very clever. That's why they call it multiforme, because if you hit it with one chemotherapy agent, it learns about the chemotherapy and it morphs into a resistant bug or a resistant cancer cell, and you have to hit it with another thing. So you have to hit it very aggressively fast and shrink it quickly, because it always pops up. It's just very aggressive. But sometimes when TMZ fails, you put TMZ with cannabinoids, and both together work to destroy and stop the resistance of the cancer cell to the TMZ, which is fantastic. And all you're doing is adding essentially marijuana. So here is where TMZ works. So just FYI, when you have the CBD and the THC together, CBD and THC together, sometimes what happens is the cancer cell likes to proliferate. That's why I put feet underneath. That's supposed to be feet. Sorry, my rough sketches are bad, but I thought it looked like SpongeBob. But anyway, the feet get inhibited by the combination with TMZ. So TMZ by itself might be able to work, but if it fails, you just add CBD, THC, and it works better. And most chemotherapy patients are probably going to be on cannabinoids anyway because of the side effects of nausea, vomiting, decreased appetite, all those things. Actually, that's a very high percentage of patients that fail chemotherapy or die. It's because they die of the side effects of the medicine. So at least if you have CBD, THC, at the least, helping with nausea, helping with appetite, bingo. I mean, if you have appetite continue, if you have nausea trumped, then at least you have the products, you can eat more. That doesn't mean you eat crappy stuff. White bread, dairy products, cupcakes, Twinkies. No, you gotta feed this the stuff it needs to fight. Well, actually, you don't want to feed the cancer cell. You want to feed the white blood cell to attack. And that's unfortunately where the white blood cell fails. But in addition to the cannabis affecting the cancer cell, hopefully to pushing it over, it's not enough information, but you can extrapolate that CBD, especially, so CBD, THC is the psychogenic part. It stimulates or binds to CB1 receptors, mostly in the brain and in nerve tissue. But CBD affects every other cell, especially immune cells. That's why I mentioned before that when you see what CBD does for multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, it affects the cells to tell them to quiet down, behave yourself, stop attacking yourself. That's what Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and multiple sclerosis is. You attack self by mistake. If you can tell the cells, hey, those cells aren't bad, they're not bacteria, they're not viruses, they're not Lyme disease, they're cells, don't attack them, then you have the autoimmune aspect of those diseases turned off, including Hashimoto's thyroiditis, for those of you with thyroid. So when I postulate that when the cells are working better, to not only stop attacking self, but to also start recognizing that these cancer cells aren't good, then they'll start to destroy and also cause autophagy, or kill the cell. So it is important, since patients are already going to be on cannabis for those two symptoms, feed the body properly. And I'm a vegetarian, but you don't have to be vegetarian. I think that if you just eat properly to fight the cancer, great. If you do happen to be fighting cancer, I'd probably be following either Ornish's techniques of low fat, low carbohydrate, mostly plant food, or switch totally over into D'Agostino's suggestion on ketosis. One way or another, you have to change the diet. But first, we have to get the appetite up. So that's where cannabis will probably be helpful. So with regards to my video yesterday on LDN, it might take a while to get the proper cannabis in your state or in your country. So I thought LDN might be easier. But in the case where you have cannabis immediately available, do that first. Do this first. Maximize on this, keep it going, and then do the LDN. But so there also, we also have, so I talked about glioblastoma multiforme, and even, again, another study that touted the effects of glioblastoma multiforme, and these guys talked about using or figuring out the proper dose of cannabis by escalating. Pretty cool about escalating the amount in the test tube. A lot of these are in test tubes, so they, again, because the United States is handcuffed with regards to the laws of scheduling the cannabis, so until we take that off the Schedule 1 level, it'll be information that's just trickling from other countries. But hopefully we'll garnish enough information and we'll be able to put a database together. I'm talking about me and my associate, so and my clinic. So the other thing that and also that has been found, for those of you who are skeptical, or if you are doctors and you want to know, ID1 is a proliferative, it stimulates proliferation, and when you use cannabis, here, I put it on my thing. When you use cannabis, sometimes what happens is you can tell the ID1 to, via a series of events in the cell, it will stop the progression of local metastasis of breast cancer in particular. ID1 is a specific gene that's responsible for that. And sometimes modulating that with CBD and THC makes it calm down. If you make it calm down, you decrease the spread. The only question is, what type of combination of THC CBD, what strain, what subtype, and that's where the information has to be released. But I did speak with the folks at, I like online, there's, not online, but in California, there is Aunt Zelda's, and it's a very popular, they take care of their own cannabis and they've patented a couple of formulas and they only sell to California. But I talked to Justin Kander who put this together for me, and this is just gobs of information. I got Justin, I appreciate it. Gobs of information that reviewed some of the studies. A lot of this is extrapolation because a lot of the information comes from the studies earlier of what your own endocannabinoids do. So we make endocannabinoids. It just so happens that the plant, marijuana, is labeled as a phytocannabinoid. The phytocannabinoids have those two biggest those two biggest components. The endocannabinoids that we have also have two components, AEA, anandamide, and 2AG. So both of those work almost the same way as the CBD and the THC, but we already produce them. It's the problem that when we stop producing them, or when we have a deficiency for whatever reason, then we can use external, exogenous, or phytocannabinoids to put inside our bodies to stimulate the same receptors. It's not that those plants magically were around the area and we use them only when we're sick. We produce our own, but in many cases we shut down. Just like producing testosterone, producing serotonin, we sometimes drain ourselves of those, and we take what? We take testosterone, or we take Zoloft, or Paxil, Prozac. We use medicines to bump up until we have our own testosterone, enough of our own testosterone with exercise, enough of our own serotonin with psychotherapy, good sleep. Well, then we get off those medicines. Well, we can take this for the time being until we fix and get back into homeostasis or hormesis. That's just balancing out life. But that takes a while, and if you're fighting cancer, you need this stuff quick. So there's also been, let's see, I talked about the ID1. Last but not least, this is, where is my picture? So, I have a picture of my mom. Well, anyway, mom's here somewhere. I don't know where I put her. But my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer around December, around Christmas time. And she had been doing fine. Just came back from a trip to Hawaii. And unfortunately, had some side pain, went to the doctor when she came back from Hawaii, and she was told she had cancer and was metastasized, and she had about 2 months to live. And I just wouldn't have told her that, but the doctor did anyway for some reason. Guess he was being honest, but he also broke her hope. And when you take somebody's hope away, that really puts them down the tubes, because sometimes when you go to a local authority and they say, "You're ugly," you might start thinking you're ugly. Or when you go to a local authority and you have chest pain, you have heart attack. The chest pain gets even worse, although it's the same chest pain. The mind has a way to work on either supporting you or defeating you. And when a local authority says, "Well, you're probably not going to live," how are you supposed to take that information? I wouldn't have told her that, but anyway, so for people with pancreatic cancer, guess what? There's also information that pancreatic cancer can get improvement with medical cannabis. So just like my glioblastoma multiforme paper, these are only small papers, but hey, listen, when you're given a diagnosis that you have 2 months to live, this is not going to hurt. In fact, it'll probably help. There's other things to do, like low dose naltrexone, like diet, like calming practice that will help, but why not? So if you have decided not to take part in chemotherapy, understandable, because that's arduous task, but I'd say get your appetite up, build up a little strength, get some better sleep, maybe use this or the LDN together, but then wallop that cancer with chemotherapy. This is just enough information to tell you that the typical chemotherapy that is used for pancreatic cancer, gemcitabine, is gemcitabine, sorry. If it is encountering patients with gemcitabine resistant pancreatic cancer, You add a little bit of cannabis to, not a little bit, but you add cannabis to this, and it makes the success rate even higher. So I don't like the word false hope, because I think that's a dichotomy. That shouldn't be, that's two words that shouldn't be together. There's either hope or no hope. And when we have no hope, get out of my clinic. When we have hope, I'm going to fight 110%. So I'd say that and again, it shows a mechanistic way that these things work. Just like the glioblastoma multiforme, just like the gastric cancer, just like the colon cancer, pancreatic cancer also is a nasty thing, but I think there's options. So if you wanted to look at the details of how it stimulates the ROS system, again here, this is the gem. So if you get the combination of CBD and THC, it works to stimulate NF-kappa B. That, in addition to the gem, will hit the mitochondria and screw up the mitochondria. And when we screw up the mitochondria, it blows up inside the cell. It destroys the cell. Apoptosis. So remember, this is fast and furious. This is what the cancer cells want. This is slow. When we get the cells to slow down, they become just as prone to apoptosis and cell death as they were before they sped up. So there's a couple different ways. Stop the spread. Stop the movement or the feeding process. Destroy from the inside. There's also another possibility of sometimes if you just use the right triggering mechanism, you can actually stop the progression from G0 to G1. That too is another way that the beauty of this plant has been purported or studied. So I think there's just so many great pieces of information that say you can benefit from this. This is also a good book. I mean, at the least, if you don't want to do if you don't believe in the studies I just put up, at the least we know that medical cannabis helps with sleep. And sleep, according to a small study, if it's less than 8 hours, the chances for recurrence of breast cancer is high. If you have sleep that's greater than 9 hours, the chance for recurrence of breast cancer is low. So just do it for sleep, if not for the inflammation I mentioned in the beginning. So, and then there's other possibilities. This is a great book in case you're on your own and you're in a different country. It tells you about different things or protocols to use, especially when it comes to different forms of cancer. Nice book, a little bit thick. This is definitely heavy to hold up when I'm sleeping at night or reading at night. So hopefully this gives you a lot of info. Here's Mom. So this is my mother, who was a great supporter of me. I took care of her, including the pancreatic cancer. I tried to do my best for her. I was just beginning my integrative medicine practice, but she was there for me all the time, and I at least we were there for her when she passed on her way out. But honestly, I know she was not in pain because she was on a lot of morphine, but just get a look at that. This lady was doing great until, who knows if she was alive today with the knowledge base I have, she would be okay, I hope, at least not just gorked out on morphine. But I can't blame her doctors, and I can't blame her because the information that was available to her community was a little limited probably. But I think there's other ways to go about when the medical community says that's all we can do. That's fine, but just hand off to the next community. And that's where traditional Chinese medicine, alternative medicine, homeopathy, the cannabis community, I think will come in handy. Low-dose naltrexone, ketogenic diets. I think there's a great girth of information that can be taken advantage of. And again, if you're given a sentence that says we can't do anything for you from one institution, I'll find another way, then we can do a lot. So don't give up. I'd always say there's options. Don't forget to eat well, and I'll subscribe to me because I'm going to put out the video on eating in cancer tomorrow. I think I already did one, but it was more for prostatic cancer and what Dean Ornish had, but I have a couple of different options at this point in time, and I'll mention all of them tomorrow. So thanks for watching up until this point. If you have a mom or a parent or a loved one that's succumbed to cancer, I pray for you. If you have somebody that's fighting, fight like hell.
So the end result of all this is to figure out eventually how to use the cannabis in your area. Now, whether you're in Denmark or Africa or in the United States. In the United States, we can't ship product outside. Not supposed to put it in the mail. Can't ship it outside the state. You can't take it on a plane. Not supposed to. I think people do all the time. But I want it would be great if you can follow the heat map that Eddie developed in Tel Aviv. If we can have the same liquid chromatography and mass spectrometer in every state, then we can take the products or the plants that are grown locally and analyze them and figure out what they're composed of. Because even though they're grown indoors, the plant will always change winter to summer, I believe. And there'll be small variations, but when we're fighting cancer, you want to have the best recipe continuously for months to years. That's how long cancer lasts. I think actually, I tell all my medical marijuana users that CBD should be in your system 2 to 3 times a day, assuming the half-life is about 6 to 12 hours, depending on your gut, how it absorbs, 3 times a day for life. I really think that this plant is not going to harm you. I think it'll help you. Again, it almost acts like a governor to the endocannabinoid system, and if the ECS is working well, then maybe you can pull off and have it maintain on your own. But anyway, for the meantime, there is a difference. I don't have any flower products, but these are from the couple of dispensaries around the area. So this is a vape, and vape it's a little bit of a cleaner form of than a flower. That's a cartridge. Now in the United States, there's also this issue with e-cigarettes causing lung disease, fatty pneumonia. But the CDC hasn't released their findings yet on the investigation for the, I think it's 7 to 8 deaths in the US and the countless amount of people that have been injured. So I cannot recommend this just yet. However, when the CDC releases their findings, I'm pretty confident that you should be able to get a vape. Smoking, the leaf, the flower, it is fine, but I don't think you can sustain levels of either of these things for the long run. And I think you're going to get baked for the most of the day. And we want people to not only fight cancer, we want them to be productive. So I would probably say if you smoke, fine. If you're using that for mood and nausea and getting to sleep, that's fine. It's fast. It's fast in and fast out, fast and furious. Not like the cancer, but it'll work, but it won't sustain levels. And you want this stuff to fight, or at least initiate every cell in your body to fight. So temporarily, okay. As far as topically, this is CBD freeze. It is nice. This is the first thing I ever tried in Colorado, but I don't think it'll give you the CBD, in my opinion, unless you're older with very, very thin skin and no fat subcutaneously. It might work for local joints. I don't think it'll work for getting all around. You want this to be distributed. You want this to get into the bloodstream somehow and to every cell in the body. So this is nice temporarily for local pain. Maybe if you have pain from the cancer, you can put this on and it'll probably disguise the pain, make you feel a little better, which is fine. But the big powerhouses are going to be getting something into the GI tract, something in the mouth and gut. So this is one form of a high CBD to THC. So this is about 200 to 300 milligrams of CBD to about 10 to 292 milligrams of CBD to about 10, I believe, of THC. So this is overwhelmingly positive dominant for CBD. This is another one that's local. This is about the same thing. Both of them, this tastes like tangerine. This doesn't taste like anything, I don't think. But if you have the option for this, I think this is more concentrated. You can go quarter dropper 3 times a day, or if you can afford it, I do half a dropper to a full dropper 3 times a day. Same thing with this, but it'll go fast. So in a month, you'll spend, what are these, 35 to 40 bucks, I think. You'll spend that to 70 bucks. Very expensive vitamin, think of it that way. But that's your chemotherapy. There's also Avexia, which is pretty cool if you can't tolerate the oil. You have to put the oil under the tongue, by the way. Leave the quarter to a half dropper to a full dropper if you can afford it. Listen, if we're fighting cancer, go full dropper 3 times a day. Now, there is a little bit under the tongue, as long as you can, and then you can swallow the rest. It's not too drying like an RSO oil, but it does work. And if you get it under the tongue, you have a little spike under the blood into the bloodstream fast, and then the rest of it gets digested through the stomach. And unfortunately, only 20% of the product will get released into the bloodstream. If you get this rectally, if you put it into a suppository with a compounding pharmacy and you put it in the rectum, it will get 70% into the bloodstream, which is cool. But that's a deal breaker to put anything in the butt. So whatever way you can get it in, great. But you have to have, if you get it into the blood in this form, it'll be sustained higher and longer than inhaled form. This is also an option. So this is a tablet. This you can't put under the tongue, it has to be digested and go through the liver. And unfortunately, again, your limitation will be with how efficient the gut works. If you have IBS, it'll be off. If you have a stomach cancer, it might not work, get absorbed properly. You only get 20% of this. And so this is expensive, but taking one tablet 3 times a day, pretty decent. The amount of, so this is 2.5 milligrams of CBD compared to 300. So there's a difference here. But I think you can still have an effect if you do 3 times a day, 3 times a day. If you can't afford it, go half tablet twice a day just to see how it works. Build up to 3 times a day. If you can go a full tablet, great, but you're going to be spending a lot of money again. But I really think if you look at chemotherapy is like $5,000 to $10,000 one round or several rounds, I guess. I mean, this is worth it, and this is your health, so there's no price. So there is THC in these products, so you do have to, even though it's minimal compared to the CBD. I do believe the CBD will modulate how the THC works for you, but I think the combination will help. So the CBD, as I mentioned in one of the studies, it works in synergy, so one scratches the back of the other and accelerates the product or the effect. And if you can't get any of that stuff because it's not legal in your area, don't do anything illegal. There's always hemp, but as I mentioned, 26% of what was evaluated in that study didn't really have or had less than what was on the label. These are expensive too, but I've seen some of these things go for not $3,000, but have 3,000 milligrams per dropper, which is outstanding. The question would be, and nobody's really studied how much actually gets into the bloodstream. Again, you want this stuff in the bloodstream at all times. Kind of think of it like an anti-inflammatory. If you have a sore knee, you want an anti-inflammatory in your bloodstream to help with pain, but you also want in your bloodstream constantly to help with inflammation. Same thing with this. Essentially, we're beating inflammation. We're also changing the way these cells work and possibly the way these cells work. So hopefully this gives you a little idea. I pray for you and your families, but keep on staying into the fight. I think there's ways to take advantage of the news that the hematologists or oncologists give you. Always just take it one day at a time. Don't forget to subscribe and pass this along for those of you who are family members. Pass this along to anybody who's in the fight. We're a bunch of warriors, and I think that we can change the way this dynamic works. So see you in the next time.